Thank you so much for this opportunity to both show the film and come back into the space. So this is a 8-minute documentary film that centers an organization in Ontario called Brown Girl Outdoor World. The film really captures a conversation between two individuals, Demisha Dennis and Ren Navarro, and it was co-directed with a colleague of mine. And the film and this presentation are animated by a few questions. Around who gets to be an entrepreneur, who belongs in the outdoors, what does centering queer joy in outdoor spaces look like, and how does film make this knowledge move? Oh, go back. Will you play the film from the, thank you. Thank you for that. So what you just watched is not only a film, it is a research method. I want to sit with that for a moment because I think it runs counter to how many of us were trained. We were taught that research happens first, in the field, in the archive, in the interview room, and then if we're lucky, we communicate it, write the article, give the talk, maybe eventually someone reads it. But documentary film collapses that sequence. The process of making Out on the Water, of spending time with Demisha and Ren, of asking them to take us into spaces that have historically excluded them, of listening to what they value and why and how. That process is itself knowledge production. Not a record of knowledge production produced elsewhere. The knowledge lives in the film. And that matters for this community in particular, because knowledge about queer entrepreneurship has been mostly produced without queer entrepreneurs in the room. Much of what we know comes from survey data, from third-party reporting, from scholarship that names queer people as populations to be studied, rather than as knowledge holders to be centered. Documentary lets us do it differently. It is embodied, relational, and visual in ways that peer-reviewed texts simply cannot be. You saw Demisha on the water. You heard Ren talking about belonging. That is knowledge, and it travels in ways that a journal article cannot. That brings me to the second function, mobilization. Film carries knowledge into communities far beyond the academy. It creates the emotional resonance that is, in my experience, the key driver of change and action. People do not change their behavior because they read a compelling literature review. They change it because something moves them. And this is the sort of focus of the rest of this short presentation, is mobilization. Mobilization only happens if we are intentional about who we are making the film for. That question has to be answered before we press record. Media expert Evan Shapiro recently pointed out something that is key. 70% of the world's population are now millennials or younger, with substantial consumer power, who grew up on social media and live in an entirely different media ecosystem. What does that mean in terms of knowledge mobilization? Who are we doing the research for? To answer that question, we need to understand where people are, and where they are has changed dramatically. The oldest millennials are turning 45 this year. Gen Z is moving into their 30s. Generation Alpha is already in its mid-teens. These are not young people who are going to grow into traditional media consumption habits. They never had those habits. Media strategist Shapiro explains that there are now two distinct media ecosystems on the planet. On one side, Gen X and older, with heavier traditional consumption habits, and on the other, everyone younger, for whom streaming and social video have converged into one seamless environment. They move between TikTok and Netflix from a vertical phone screen to a horizontal television set without thinking of it as a change of medium at all. So what does this mean concretely? YouTube has surpassed the BBC in total reach in the UK. In the US, it is the #1 channel on television, not just bigger than any individual broadcaster, it is bigger than entire legacy groups. This is not a temporary disruption. This is a new permanent condition. Shapiro's warning to the media industry is also a warning to us researchers, filmmakers, and creatives. We cannot afford to make work that is designed for the old ecosystem and then wonder why it isn't reaching anyone. The question is never just, is the film good? The question is, where does it live and who finds it there? So thinking and privileging an audience-first approach would look something like this. Thinking of distribution as a research design decision, shaping how you make, how long the film is, your work is, what platform it's optimized for, and who you build relationships with before the film is finished. Free online distribution via YouTube provides the broadest possible reach. That removes the paywall barriers for queer communities who may have less disposable income and puts the film in the world's largest search and discovery ecosystem. Social media is where discovery actually happens for younger audiences. Short-form excerpts on Reels, TikTok, and Threads don't compete with the film, they create pathways into it. The trailer is already out on several of those platforms. Community and queer networks are where the affinity lives. Shapiro talks about the affinity economy. The idea that what matters now is not whether someone watched 10 seconds and scrolled away, but whether they care enough to return to share, to subscribe, to show up. Queer and trans organizations, outdoor and adventure communities, pride festivals, these are audiences with existing loyalty and trust. Film screenings in these contexts can generate discussions and action in ways that passive online viewing rarely does. There's possibilities for educational distribution. A 20-minute discussion after an 8-minute screening can do more than shift how practitioners think about queer entrepreneurship than a lot of other pedagogical tools that I know. Film festivals build credibility and press coverage, and they connect the film with curated audiences. And we have a few Black queer film festival directors that are interested in screening the film. And finally, research and policy networks. And none of these channels are mutually exclusive. A good distribution plan includes all of them sequentially, thoughtfully, with clear goals for each. So 4 things as I close. First, documentary is methodology. Film creates knowledge, it doesn't merely report it, and that distinction matters for how we value and fund this kind of work. Second, audience first, always. Know that you're making this film, who you're making this film for before you press record. Third, the media ecosystem is merged. Streaming and social video are one world for 70% of the global population. And fourth, build affinity, not just views. Love, loyalty, and community are what convert a viewer into an advocate. Queer communities are already extraordinarily good at this. Our job as filmmakers and researchers is to build with those communities, not make films at them and hope the message lands. Thank you.